So I think most of us have this problem about fix-its and them staying in that fix-it pile or tote for a while before they actually get fixed. But I actually have a bigger problem than just that. But first, I have to say thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this video and also giving me some incentive to actually complete this project and the video. Because just like those fix-it piles, some of the projects to be shown in this video would probably have gotten started and then ended up in the finish later pile, but with deadlines. Anyway, Squarespace is an all-in-one platform to swiftly and efficiently run your own website. We'll talk more about their great time-saving features later on in this video. Back to my problem. Over a year ago, I took a thrift store shopping spree to find clothes specifically for the purpose of remaking them into vintage-inspired blouses. I've always wanted some clothing to have a touch of vintage to them, but also not strictly vintage. The thing is, they're hard to find, especially in thrift stores. Like, they're either all the vintage style or they're just plain normal. I might also point out thrift stores are my main store that I shop for clothes in and have been ever since I was little, and I have no intention of changing that, even though it has been almost a year since I've stepped into one. But at the same time, maybe that's why I've finally decided to take some time to tackle this pile of clothes that I bought over a year ago. But yes, this problem. I bought clothes that I had no intention of wearing, got them home, stuck them in a tote, and they sat there for over a year. Not a great way to use money. So it's time to finally reap some reward from my investment by actually putting this purchase to good use, like actually wear clothes that I bought. No, this is not all the stuff I bought in that shopping spree. This is all mixed up, the little fix-its with the ones that need slight alterations, plus the ones that I want to remake. So I have a lot of fix-its that need attention, but we're addressing one problem at a time, and we're gonna save that one for another day. So first up, I've got to get them all sorted out. Pick out which ones are for the remaking, and then pick one pile that I want to work on, and that's the blouses and tops. So I'm not gonna tackle all of these, but I'm just gonna get started and see how many I can get done. So let's go do that. First up, the one that I have the simplest plans for. I like to have things to tie on shirts, and I like high-waisted outfits. So I'll be shortening this one and tying the front in some way or the other. To dress up the neckline a bit, I'll add a simple little collar and then possibly do something with the sleeves. First, cut off the extra length and cut a slit for the tie. After testing the tie, I need a bit more room, so I cut little perpendicular slits and then rounded the inner corners off. and then rehem the bottom edge, including the little tie points. Now onto the collar. I'm going to do a Peter Pan style collar, but due to my limited amount of fabric, I won't be going all the way around the neck. I'll just be going just enough to make the front neckline look like it has a collar. Once I got these two collar pieces made, I'm going to do a very basic and simple way of attaching them to the neckline. I simply folded in the raw edge, placed the edge overlapping the edge of the neckline, but on the wrong side of the neckline, and stitched it in place. As you can see, I decided to do nothing with the sleeves themselves. Now for this oversized shirt. I really liked the fabric, plus since it's so large, I have enough of it to really remake it into something cute. So my ideas for it involve adding a front yoke and adding some gathers to both the front and the back, also make it shorter and add something to tie. And then with the sleeves, I want to keep them as big as I can so that they have some poof and also maybe a little bit of a billowing effect. First, cut off the sleeves, cut open the side seams, and unpick the shoulder seams, and also some of the neckline and front placket. Since this is such a large shirt, I do need to rework the shoulder seam so it lays at the top of my shoulder. Now unpick the back yoke. The yoke needs to be double thick, so the inner layer will just be made from the fabric that used to lay in that front yoke area, but then the visible outer layer, the second layer, will be cut on a bias to match the look of the back yoke. And since I'm making a short blouse, I'm using the extra length in the front two panels to cut out those bias cut yoke pieces. I got the shoulder seam sewn, and now I can sandwich the front panel pieces into my double thick yoke pieces. And here's where I'm adding some gathers. Then just a simple top stitch to secure this sandwich in place. And I also got the front yoke piece sandwiched into the front placket. Now I need to figure out the collar. It's too large for my neck, and I'll need to rework it, or I could just get a little bit creative and take advantage of the little button and hole that's on it. After marking and cutting my new V-neck neckline collar placement, I'm just sandwiching those raw edges into the unpicked collar band and top stitching it in place. Now back to the unpicked back yoke piece. I also want gathers in this panel, but not all the way across the back. And then again, some top stitching to secure this sandwich. Now to close up those side seams. First, trimming off the extra width. Sewing it closed, and then a serge to bind the raw edges. Time to tackle the waistband and tie, which will be the same piece. I'll be taking advantage of this bias cut facing, which was on the inside of the shirt. So first, some unpicking, then some cutting off of the excess fabric, and sew the varying lengths of pieces together to get one nice long waistband tie. Now I just need to get this bottom edge of the shirt sandwiched into this waistband, gathering some of the back and the front panels, and as I've been saying many times, then a top stitch to secure this sandwich. For the cuffs, I am using the original, but trimmed them down to be not as wide. The sleeve itself was kept the same, just needed to gather the wrist and armhole. And one final serge around the armhole concludes this remake of a shirt.
For a different type of remake, here's a large linen jacket. I really fell in love with the fabric, but also this back. I'd like to keep this as it is, though I'm thinking I might need to rework it a little bit to make it more proportional to my size. As for the rest of the jacket, I'd like to rework the front so it's more fitted, adding princess seams which curve into the armhole, and then possibly replicate the back waist seam at the front. First, cut off the sleeves. Then I unpicked the back seam. I wanted a bit more flare to the bottom section, so I took in the top of that center back seam. On the upper section of the back, I made the darts a little bit larger. Resew that pointed waist seam, and we're back to where we started, just now with a little more flattering back design. Onto the front. I decided to start pinning the shape of the princess seam into the front pieces, and as I was doing it, I decided to just sew it like that. I just sewed in place with a top stitch. Next, I re-sewed the side seam, but I guess I forgot to film it, and then I trimmed the bottom edge and created a new hem. With the sleeves, I narrowed them, serging the edge, and I did have to recut the shape of the armhole to get a better fit on them. After getting these sleeves re-sewn to the jacket, that's it for this one. And as you can see, I decided against adding a waist seam to the front and just continued the princess seam down to the hem. I think one more remake is needed before we finish this video. How about this cute little polka dotted one? It's a little large on me, but mainly it's just not my style. Again, I'm going to shorten the blouse, having it end around my waist, and I'm thinking darts for the front and back. Then let's do short puff sleeves with a little cuff and placket, and instead of a waistband and tie, I think a waistband with a button will do nicely. First, unpicking the sleeves, and then some playing with the darts. After looking it over, I think 2 pleats running from top to bottom adds a fun little touch, and same with the front, just one on each side. So unpick the back yoke and re-sandwich the back piece into it with the added pleats and top stitch. Then the same process with the shoulder seams, adding the dart to those front pieces. Next, give a good slit down the side seam to separate and re-sew it in a more flattering place. Give it a nice trim. Get sidetracked and tack down the top and bottom of the pleats on the bodice. Then go back to those trimmings and cut the waistband out of them. And with some lucky placements, the dots will line up and it's hard to tell that the waistband is made of 4 individual pieces. Now for some more sandwiching. And as you can see, I made a little point on the waistband end. Then the top stitching, the placement of which to match the look at the front placket. Last but not least, the sleeves. I scavenged the sleeve plackets with some unpicking, cut a slit in the new sleeves, and reattached the sleeve plackets. Using the cut off part of the sleeve, I made the sleeve cuffs, and then sandwiched the sleeve edge into that cuff, while adding some gathers near the sleeve placket, and some final top stitching. Also, off camera, a few buttonholes stitched and buttons placed really completed it all, but there you have it.
Wow, that took 3 days to remake all of these blouses. It might have seemed like I could have just as easily used fabric to make these blouses, just because I did so much to them. Some of them I undid most of the seams. So the question is, why get shirts in the first place? 2 points. 2 points. If you notice, the collar and the button and buttonholes were hardly messed with on any of the blouses. This is my least favorite part about making a blouse. Plus the buttons, I mean, you'd probably spend just as much buying the buttons just in and of themselves, as I bought the entire shirt for. Second, recycling. It's so easy to think of recycling as just dropping it off at a place where they do whatever they do with it, and that's it. But recycling in a way that uses an existing item and making it into an item that serves a purpose in your everyday life, that's like a really great way of recycling things. Very practical. So yes, some of these blouses could have easily been in my wardrobe as they originally were, and some of them actually were there. But I found myself never wearing them because they didn't fit my style and the outfits I like to wear. And now, with some work, they are my style and I will wear them. So here's some encouragement to do something with those outdated or just not your style clothes and put some work into them to make them wearable, or more like more enjoyable to wear. And we're back with a little bit more about our sponsor, Squarespace. I don't know about you, but online things like building a website is just a bit daunting. The only reason I survived the process of making my own website was thanks to my very techie brothers who knew what they were doing. But maybe you don't have those brothers. So Squarespace is there to be that for you. From setting up the website to managing and running it, Squarespace is there to walk you through the process in a simple and efficient way. Not only this, but your website can be anything you dream of, whether it's a portfolio, a membership platform, or online sales. So get creative with the design and build your own online world with the help of Squarespace. Head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch your one-of-a-kind website, go to squarespace.com/BellaMazeDesigns to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. So you could just kind of call Squarespace a techie brother to help you along the process. So with that, thank you all for watching this video. This project of turning clothes into different clothes was, well, different than my usual content, and I hope you enjoyed. As always, thank you to all my patrons for being with me through this sewing and YouTubing journey. And of course, you can learn more about Patreon at the link above, and down in the description, there'll be a link as well. Go into your own sewing area and learn, create, and inspire. And maybe turn an old piece of clothing into something new.